Hey y'all, it's Wednesday morning and I need to be working. I've got so much to do that I don't know how I'm going to get it all done. But sometimes you just have to tell some stories. You have to make some videos. So that's what I'm doing. I'm taking about a 2 or 3 hour break here and I'm going to knock out a video. And I think this is a great one. We've got 4 encounter stories with this one. The last one is very special. It's a guest narrator. Just wait till the last story and you're going to really enjoy this story. I mean, the 3 in front of it are great. Let's just sit back, have a good time, and listen to some good stories. All right, here we go.
I go out at night for a drink or 2. It seems somehow that bothers you. You're high-strung, babe.
This first story is from a woman in New York State, and it's a really good story. I think I did a video back a couple of weeks ago that jogged her memory, and I'm pulling her story up to the front because let me just set this up. You're going to hear her email to me, you're going to hear her story, and then you're going to hear her daughter's story, which is basically the same story that she tells. However, her daughter has a handicap from birth. She's 29 years old, and she took the time to type out a story for me to read. And I'm so excited about it that she did this, and I want her to hear her story on the air. And I want you guys to listen because it is so sweet, and it's a great little story. So let me get started with the woman who wants to keep her name out of it and the exact place she lives, and that's great. But I want to start with her story, and then I'm going to tell her daughter's story, which is really good. She says, "Let me start by telling you where this was and a little background information. Our property was a renovated 100-year-old 2-story farmhouse. It was located on 10 acres of land. Our yard was 5 acres. The other 5 acres consisted of 3 swamps, roughly a half acre each, 2 fields, and about an acre of pine trees, and a spring house that we put our caught fish in until we were ready to eat them. The swamps were fed by a cove that branched off the Chenango River. That 5 acres was surrounded by farmland and more swamps. We had dairy farms on either side of our place and a huge hill across the road that was pasture land down front and miles of woods up top. Those woods were overrun with deer. This was in a small town in upstate New York. My 12th birthday was in mid-July 1969. My mom said that I could have a party with a sleepover as long as we slept outside in the tent." Oh, that is so fun. Okay, you can have a sleepover, but you ain't staying in the house. That's funny. But you're going to find out how many girls it was, and you're going to know why her mama wanted them out in the yard. My brothers had pitched the tent in the side yard 30 or so feet from my house, right beside the apple orchard. It was a pretty big canvas tent with 1 window and a door that zipped. There were 7 of us girls. 6 laid side by side and 1 girl laid crossways by the door at our feet. We were telling jokes and doing a lot of giggling, being 12-year-old girls. Around midnight, we suddenly smelled a horrible smell. We, of course, were all picking on each other about who farted. Nobody fessed up. It got so bad that I was going to open the door. The window was already open. We were still talking and laughing when the girl by the right tent wall said, "Everybody be quiet." We hushed, and she said she heard some noises. We didn't hear anything, so we started picking on her about her being scared and laughing. All of a sudden, she screamed and rolled against the tent wall. Then she hurried out of her sleeping bag and stood up and said that someone was out there. I said, "Yeah, probably one of my brothers." I had 2 older brothers. I called their names, but instead of an answer, we heard footsteps running away through the apple orchard, not toward the house, which was odd. We asked the girl why she had screamed, and through her sobs, she said, I was lying on my side with my head propped on my elbow so I could see you guys. Suddenly, someone lifted the floor of the tent so that I was rolling towards Diane. I threw myself back to keep from rolling on her, and I ended up leaning my body against the side of the tent. There was something there. I flung my hand to catch myself, and I felt a huge leg. We all made light of her story to calm her down. I said that I would go in the house and see which brother had been up to no good. None of them would stay in the tent, so we all went into the house, and I called my mother to come downstairs. She said that we were all scared and pale looking and all trying to tell her what happened at one time. She told us we must have imagined it because both of my brothers were gone. They had gone to spend the night with friends at her urging because of us girls being there. There was no convincing her that someone had been out there. We all went back out, and the tent still reeked. We each picked our sleeping bags and went back into the house and slept in the basement rec room. The next morning, I went out to look around the outside of the tent. The stakes on the right side had all been pulled out of the ground, but I didn't notice anything else. I asked the girls, while we all sat eating breakfast, what noises they had heard the night before, and they said footsteps and something sounded sort of like whispering and heavy breathing. 2 others said they heard that stuff too. I don't want my name mentioned, and I'm not mentioning the name of the little town. I hope this story is good enough to read. It sure has been a mystery that I had put out of my mind. 50 years is a long time. That's funny that I never thought of Bigfoot, though, and I read the articles in my dad's Argosy and Field and Stream before this event. It's strange that I don't even remember being that scared at the time. I think everyone just focused on the moonwalk that happened just a few days later. Oh, that's a bit of interesting history. And I think it's a great story. I don't know. It's just one of those stories that makes me feel good. Girls having fun out in a little camp out. They all get scared and run inside, which is probably pretty typical. My daughter and her friends would do the same thing. But on this occasion, obviously something was outside the tent. The little girl felt something and she was pushed over, so something is going on. Now, could it be Bigfoot? I don't know, but the smell is the telltale sign that something is up with that. So I think this is an interesting encounter story. Now, I want to read you her daughter's story. And remember what I said at the beginning of this, that her daughter is handicapped and lives with her. And she's almost 30 years old. And she took the time to write this story. And I don't know her name. And I guess if I did, I couldn't tell you. But I want her to hear her story. And this is really good. Hi. Oh, she does tell me her name right here. Hi, my name is Brittany. I live in a small Florida town out in the country. When I was 9 years old, I asked my mom if my siblings and I could have a camp out. She said yes, and I got busy texting my friends to see if they could come over. My big sister and little brother both helped me set up our big tent. We put it in the backyard under some trees. There ended up being 9 kids, my siblings and a few cousins, and a few friends from school. Everyone came over the following afternoon. We played some games, we ate supper, and watched a movie. When it got dark, we grabbed our flashlights and went out to the tent. We played flashlight tag, and we talked. When everyone was quiet, we heard a low growl and sticks breaking. Next came a weird whoop noise. We were all so scared. My cousin Alex said, What is that? My cousin Kaylee answered, I think it's a Bigfoot. Just then, the whole tent started shaking, and we heard a loud howl over our screams. Then we saw Kaylee stand up and unzip the tent. She had her flashlight on. She yelled, It is a Bigfoot! We all heard it running away into the woods. Kaylee told us it was huge and very dark colored. And then I woke up, shaking all over, quickly realizing the whole thing had been a dream. Brittany, that is a great story, and I'm so glad you wrote it for us. And thank your mother for sending in her encounter. I think these are both wonderful. Thank you both very much. This next story is from someone who, again, wants to be anonymous, no problem. And he's going to tell me a story that he had when he was younger. And then he's going to tell us a story about his uncle back in the, 1940s. And I think it's really good. I hope you enjoy it. Let's see. A friend and I were riding dirt bikes in what is now St. Joe State Park outside Park Hills, Missouri. The lay of the land is typical Ozark Mountains, and since this was once the lead mining capital of the world, there are a lot of mine tailings. That is sand left from tailing ponds. We had stopped in a sandy area between two clumps of trees and thick brush. It was summertime. It was an overcast day. When we stopped, I told my friend it smelled kind of like something died near there. About that time, we heard a loud chuffing grunt come from behind us. It immediately raised goosebumps, as I had never heard that noise when hunting or hiking in the woods, which I had done countless times growing up. Steve, my friend, asked me, "Did you just pass gas?" I laughed and he said, "Man, that was loud." And I said, no, that was behind me. Just as I was saying that, there was a loud crashing through the brush noise. We both started our bikes and we got out of there. Although we didn't see anything, we both felt it had to be Bigfoot. We came to this conclusion a few years after it happened, as it wasn't a sound that a deer or a bear or any other animal we know of would or could make. Now my other story is a second-hand story from my uncle, who after talking about the previous incident, he told me this experience. This happened in the 1940s. He and his dad were rabbit hunting about 20 miles north of where my experience happened. There was about an inch of freshly fallen snow on the ground. They had walked a few miles from the dirt country road, and as they were walking the edge of the clearing, they discovered huge footprints in the snow that were in a straight line, unlike a human would walk. My uncle asked his dad what would have made the prints that big, and his dad told him that it was the Blue Man. This is a Missouri legend. This wasn't the first time his dad had run across that kind of tracks in the area. He suggested that they head back. This happened at a time when nobody would have gone that far into the woods to fake tracks. The more I read and learn about this mysterious creature, I have learned that they do indeed leave prints in a straight line. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I can send you Google satellite images of the area where these happened if you want. Yes, sir, we enjoyed it, and no need for Google Maps. We're about the stories, but I appreciate the offer. I think this is just another case of noises, smells, sounds, and even in the 1940s, seeing tracks, just more evidence that there's something out there in the woods that people rarely see, and I think it's really cool. Thank you very much for sending that to me, sir. I appreciate it. All right, this third story is, again, from someone anonymous, and you know when people I could say their first names and nobody would know who they are. But just to keep with the spirit of honesty and, I want to be trustworthy with these stories that even if you give your first name, you say you want to be anonymous, that's what I'm going to say. You're anonymous. So this gentleman has a story from Florida. Let's just get into it. I grew up in Florida in the 90s. My home bordered a very big golf course, and my brothers and I would often spend lots of time out there. It was awesome having that golf course basically as a yard. The golf course rangers would often kick us off, but we mostly went after hours in the late afternoon when all the golfers had gone. We spent hours and hours in the woods. We would gather old golf balls by the hundreds, clean them up, and sell them back to the golfers. We were very familiar with those woods. I know you're thinking, how woodsy would a golf course be? Well, I can assure you this place had vast amounts of forest and trails. Let me stop there. I used to live next to a golf course. It was kind of out in the country, and early in the mornings in September and October, I would go out there and shoot squirrels. it was in the county. It was out of the city limits, so we could hunt it. So I know what he's talking about. Some of these golf courses are pretty woodsy, and they hold a lot of wildlife. But anyway, here we go. It was more than just an 18-hole golf course. One late afternoon, I packed up some tackle and went to my favorite bass hole. It was a big lake that bordered with some trees and had a little creek attached in the woods. I would fish the mouth of that creek. I was alone, and it was getting late. I was out of my mother's whistling range. She would stand on the back porch and whistle at us boys, and we would come running home. I decided to leave. I didn't want to walk home in the complete darkness when all of a sudden I felt all of the hair stand up on my neck and I got chills. I looked over into the woods about 20 yards away and I saw two yellow glowing eyes. I couldn't see its body, just the eyes, and it was taller than me. I backed out of the woods. When I got to the clearing, I bolted home and got a nice whooping for coming home late. I never told my mom because she wouldn't allow us to play out there again, knowing there's a potential threat, and we really loved it out there. Now, as an adult, I like to think that it was an owl on a branch in the shadows in the sunset. But I've seen plenty of owls and other animals, and nothing has ever made me feel that way. Here in Florida, we have black bears, but only in selected areas. I really don't know what it was. I just remember the fear I had. I never went out there again alone, and I have never had that feeling again. Feel free to use my story and just don't use my name. This is still a relatively small town, and we have enough crazies here, and I don't want them to think I'm one of them. LOL. Thanks for your time and keep up the good work. Man, that's a great story. And I know that fear, even as a grown man, there are times, I was working late the other night, and when I walk out of my office, it's pitch black. And if I don't remember to bring a light, or I've left my phone, with the little flashlight on it inside, I have to feel my way 70 yards back to my door because it's so dark I can't see anything. Well, the other night I walked out and I had my dogs with me, all four of them, and they can see fine at night, but I couldn't see anything. And I had a glass of ice water, one of these stadium cups full of ice water, in my teeth because I wanted to carry it in. My wife likes to clean up the dishes at night. She gets mad at me if I leave them out here in my office. So I had this cup in my teeth, and I'm walking out, and my hands have things in them. That's why I had the cup in my teeth. And I keep hearing this noise, and every time I hear it, I turn around, and I'm telling you, I'm spooked. I'm a little nervous. And I would turn around and start walking, and every time I would turn, I would hear this shuffle behind me. And I later figured out, just a few minutes later, that it was the ice slushing around in that cup, and the way the sound was coming out in my face, it sounded like it was behind me. So anyway, I laughed at myself and made it back to the porch, and I swore then I was going to bring a light out here every time I work late at night. But anyway, that's just I didn't mean to try to up your story, buddy. I think it's good, and the point is to tell you that fear that you get when you're alone in the woods and you see something odd, whether it's something threatening or something you imagine, the fear is the same. And that heat wave comes over your face and your back kind of tingles and you just get tense. It's real fear. So I think that's a great story, and man, thanks for sending it for all of us to listen to. Okay, this last encounter is by a friend of mine. It's written and narrated by a friend of mine. Her name is Kat Ward. She is the host of the Paranormal Heart podcast, which is broadcast over anywhere you can find podcasts. iHeart, Spotify, Stitcher, Apple, all the places that you can get a podcast. And she has a YouTube channel, which I'm going to link to in the description. And in the end screen will be her latest video on YouTube, her latest interview with, she does a paranormal podcast, and I think it's great. Kat and I have become good, quote, internet friends. We text about once a week and talk about everything going on in the podcast world and in the YouTube world. And it's interesting to me to talk to her because she's really out there. I'm trying to figure out a way to get a podcast on those venues, and hopefully we'll have that done soon. And she's inspired me to do that because she's just really good. But I think you're going to love her story. It's an encounter that they had while they were out on a paranormal investigation with what she thinks is a cryptid, and I think you're going to love it. So let's get rolling.
Hey everyone, I'm Kat Ward, host of Paranormal Heart Podcast. I'm also a paranormal investigator with Canadian Supernatural Research Society here in the Ottawa Valley in Ontario, Canada. I recently told Cam about an encounter the team and I had a few years back while on an investigation, and he invited me to be a guest narrator and share my encounter with you. I was greatly honored for the invitation and gladly accepted. So back in September 2014, our team was joined by a radio station from Toronto who spent the weekend with us doing investigations. They were interested in what we do and wanted to see firsthand what a paranormal investigation is actually about. One location we took them to is a local legend here on Buck Hill. Now, before I get to our encounter, let me give you just a bit of history on Buck Hill. According to local legend, one winter during the Depression, a logger told his family to stay indoors while he went to get firewood. There was a bad snowstorm brewing outside, and he wanted them to be safe indoors while he was out. When he returned, his wife told him the dog ran out and their little girl went searching for him. The father took his lantern and searched to no avail. She was never seen again. The legend continues to say the logger went mad and never stopped his search even after his death. There are reports of eerie lights on this isolated logging road that draws many in search of the glow of the lantern as the ghost of the logger continues his search for his daughter. Now, Buck Hill is only about an hour away from Algonquin Provincial Park, a location that has had Bigfoot sightings for many years. Keep that in mind as I continue with my story. Buck Hill Road has a few homes at the bottom of the hill, and then it's nothing but trees on either side. There are no street lights, and it's very dark and eerily quiet. There were about 10 of us that night, in the middle of the road, each person holding various pieces of equipment for our investigation. Questions were being asked, such as, "Is there anyone who would like to speak to us?" And "Could you tell us your name?" Pausing for at least 30 seconds between each question to allow for potential ghostly answers. Small pebbles were being thrown at us, but we never thought much of it, thinking it was merely spirits giving us a sign they were there and ready to speak. We decided to move and continue our investigation a bit further up the hill. We were scattered around looking into the darkness with only the glow of a few flashlights and our equipment. It's very quiet. Then a loud noise came from my right in the forest, like something walking through trees. We all instinctively huddled together, back to back, turning on more lights to see what that was. Whatever it was big. I mean, really, really big. We've been there many times before and never had encountered anything like this. It could not have been a person lurking in the woods. We would have heard them. Other than a gentle breeze through the trees, there were no noises before we heard whatever it was. We jokingly said, maybe it was Bigfoot, and we all laughed. Then we started putting two and two together. Those small pebbles I mentioned about earlier, the ones that were being thrown at us, well, that made a little bit more sense. Was it Bigfoot watching as we conducted our investigation? No one dared go into the woods to find out. Thank you so much, Cam, for letting me tell my story. I greatly appreciate it. Much love to you and all your listeners. Bye now.
Okay, that's going to do it for this video. Thank you all for watching my videos. I really appreciate it, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks. Have a great week.